Well, hello, and welcome to the Astrology channel. I am Joji, I am an astrologer, and I have Pluto and Sagittarius, which always reminds me that I am not a millennial, as much as I would love to be. As always, I'm here with my good friend, Kyle Pierce. Hi, Kyle.
Hi, Joe. Yeah, I'm Kyle Pierce. I'm an astrologer, and I eat Pluto for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day.
Nice. What does it taste like? Super not expecting that question at all.
I was not. I might have an answer, though. Like power, with a sprinkle of death.
Nice segue into The Outers. This is the show, the spin-off show to our daily horoscopes, where we talk about the outer planets through the bounds. If you don't know what the bounds are, I'm sure we'll talk about them someday. But for now, they are just these tiny little weird divisions in the zodiac that are irregular, weird, but fascinating. Pluto is entering the first bound of Aquarius very soon, and will stay there for a really long time. This transit goes from November 19th all the way to April 10th of 2027, so it's definitely one that we'll have a lot of time to get acclimated to. But on that note, let's take a look at how this ingress looks like. Like I said, Pluto comes into Mercury's bounds in Aquarius on November 19th, where Pluto will be, of course, in Aquarius, in Venus's decan and in Mercury's terms, soon receiving a sextile from the Sun and a Moon opposition. And Mercury, the bound ruler, is in the 11th house from Pluto.
Yeah, so I think we're getting fully introduced now to what will be a longer story, themes that are gonna, build and define this period of time in ways that are not necessarily obvious up front, but the difference between millennials and Gen Z people. Until Joji just mentioned it right now, I sort of forgot that Joji's Gen Z, and I thought about it. I was like, "Yeah, you are actually. You're not. You're not one of me. You're different." And I, it's not a difference that like slaps me in the face all the time. But then when I think about it, I'm like, "Oh yeah, like there is that subtle sort of generational difference." So what do you think the Pluto and Aquarius generations are going to be like?
I think the biggest thing that marked the Pluto and Capricorn generation was being born into that economic crisis and kind of just having that as like the thing that has marked your upbringing and your childhood, and it's just everywhere. And I think that now for this Pluto and Aquarius generation, I think it will be the AI story or just like the techno overlord stories, kind of just being born into that. And what does it mean for a person to be born having like an AI assistant in their home 24/7? Like even my siblings who are of the Pluto and Capricorn generation, I already see them like talking to Alexa, like it's like no big deal. And I'm like, I always get so weirded out by it. And I imagine that that will only escalate now. Yeah. So I think that the biggest thing with this Pluto and Aquarius phase of our lives or collective lives is just getting acclimated into the idea that the more than human is more tangible in a way. I feel like Aquarius, as an air sign that is ruled by Saturn, tries to take these things that are conceptual and abstract and try to give form to them. And so I think that that's one of the things that I would expect with just Pluto being in Aquarius in general.
And with Pluto, you're always dealing with Pluto, like sort of warps, kind of intensifies certain elements of the sign that it's in, and mutes or like represses other parts, and creates this kind of like distorting quality where it's both like a super version of itself and also not itself at all, which I think you can already kind of find in Aquarius inherently, because Aquarius it's one of the humane signs. It's represented by the water bearer, right? It's one of the few signs that has a human figure associated with it. And that is a quality of Aquarius, that sort of humanistic view on things. But on another level, it's interested in humans, but not like as much on like an interpersonal level. It's a little more focused on humanity as a whole, which can sometimes make it feel kind of detached and impersonal, inhuman. in a way. I think what we're gonna hear increasingly throughout this period, this sense of like a grand human experiment where like we're implementing all these new technologies, implementing these like crazy fringe social ideas, and kind of just seeing what happens. A potentially dangerous human experiment on a grand scale, which may feel harsh or may cause problems for people on an individual level, but we may end up collecting data which serves humanity on a greater scale.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think that it's really interesting to have Mercury be in Sagittarius, about to turn retrograde, and in their own terms, as the ruler of the bound, as the ingress is happening, because I think that as much as this whole Pluto journey is a 20-year-long journey, and we're really on the first steps of it, and I find that this first bound is a very conceptual bound, and I like that this idea that you're talking about experiments and things like that, because these first few years, like we said, Pluto will be there until April 2027, is really this spot where we will just toss spaghetti at the wall, test all the theories, and see what sticks and what doesn't. And a lot of these theories will be proven to just work on paper. I think that that's kind of a big thing about this moment in time. But what I find interesting too is that the thing that could be triggering all of that is this 11th house relationship that Mercury has with Pluto, because the 11th house is the house of hopes, dreams, goals, and aspirations. It's kind of like the hopes and dreams of the collective, and like you're talking about, Kyle. And so I think that yes, there's this collection of data, but it's likely to be painted with this sort of hopeful message that even though like this is a little questionable and a little weird and a little scary, in the end, it'll be good for everybody. It'll be good for most people. And I think that Mercury going retrograde during the ingress seems like there's certain things that will probably be walked back on in the long term. But I think that in the smaller scale in our day-to-day lives, I think it's just good to lean on this idea of just experimenting and trial and error, and to not fall into the Mercury and Sagittarius trap of like, I found the remedy to all of our issues, because I don't think that that's even possible.
It's interesting that we have that like idea of hopes and dreams and that 11th house suggestion. And Pluto, I think, will certainly amplify the sense of hope and idealization of like what like these new advanced technologies, AI in particular, will say can do for humanity, but equally in a polarizing sort of way, amplify the dread and nightmare scenarios, which will probably mostly exist for most of us in our minds. We'll see at least some of those stories play out. We'll see some like, worst case, best case scenarios for some of what Pluto introduces.
And that's really what I was trying to grab with the image for Pluto in this bound. In the image, we just have this gigantic robot with a gigantic heart. It looks like an anatomical heart for the most part. And then just like a tiny little human in front of the robot, just looking at it. It doesn't seem like the robot is all threatening in any way. It's gigantic, which could indicate that it's very easy for it to overpower the little person. But I think that the crux of the image is just this contemplative moment of being faced with something much larger than you.
A sort of synthetic representation of humanity in a way, but of what humanity on a larger scale that can be both benevolent and utterly terrifying. And like the individual sort of being relatively small within that context. I think that, not the first person to talk about this, but the Pluto and Leo generation, which definitely was the source of the kind of celebrity culture, the sort of cult of individuality that maybe developed and that we've been kind of living in the aftermath of for a long time. I think a lot of that's going to get challenged. We're going to see more of a decentralization decentralization in general, I think, is going to be a theme, the sort of diffusing power to the fringe as opposed to living at the center, but also maybe moving away from big like mega celebrity culture and moving more towards these like smaller, more specific sort of experiments in humanity that will sort of exist and permeate and populate culture, and for both better and for worse.
With that out of the way, we do have a set of 12 images, one for each of the zodiac signs, so you can better situate yourself in this really, really long Pluto stay in this Mercury bound. This is, of course, based on your rising sign, and if you don't know your rising sign, you can always book a reading with me or Kyle to help you find it out, or you can just look it up on the internet if you know the time that you were born. But with that out of the way, let's get started with Aries. Aries has a very similar image to the overall Pluto and Mercury's terms image. We still see that same robot. We still see people contemplating their relationship to that towering figure, but Aries is not alone. Aries has company in that, and I think that the biggest thing that I was sitting with for Aries is just the sense that maybe they can benefit from a lot of these changes within the zeitgeist. There's hope that can be found in coming together with others to facilitate some of the positive aspects of this Pluto transit.
If you have Aries rising, Pluto will be going through your 11th house, right? Which it means that you will be better positioned to maybe profit from the sort of larger scale changes that Pluto is introducing. I think the decentralization of power, like putting the capacity for technology to put a lot of power in individuals' hands, will be especially accessible to Aries rising people, and they'll probably really love having lots of power in their hands and able to carve out maybe little kingdoms for themselves on the periphery and in maybe the new center.
Well, for Taurus, things look a little scarier. Still have a similar image, but now we're back to just you and a robot. But this robot looks a little bit more ominous for Taurus people. Pluto will be in your 10th house, so in many ways we can read this as the robot is your boss, or the new zeitgeist is your boss, and you have to not bow down to its ruling, but at the very least try and find some way to work with it, which can be a little rough for a fixed sign like Taurus.
Yeah, I think with the Pluto in the 10th house for Taurus rising, it'll be maybe being forced to adapt to a changing zeitgeist that feels uncomfortable, that feels maybe impersonal, and there may be like skill sets that get outdated and you have to retrain, which is going to be a little more uncomfortable for Taurus. And overall, probably a little more likely to find themselves under the heel of like a highly automated bureaucracy that may or may not be beneficial.
Well, Gemini is a little bit different. I feel like they're well positioned to benefit from a lot of that, especially in Pluto's stay in Mercury's bound, which is the ruler of Gemini. In the image, we just have this figure plugged into the robot. I feel like that's the sense that I get for Gemini. Their ability to hold these opposing views and to just play and experiment can really get them pretty far ahead in collaborating with the robotic overlords that be.
Pluto in the 9th house, Gemini rising, is going to be well positioned to learn from and gather a lot of data from the great human experiments that are playing out in the world. There might be a little bit more of a susceptibility to like strange cults that emerge from like fringe belief systems or like tech-based cults, you know, singularity, like messiahs and shit. Gemini will find themselves interacting with stuff like that more, but Gemini is more flexible and amenable to the Pluto experience in Aquarius.
Cancer, on the other hand, I feel like they're gonna be a little less embracing of some of these changes. Pluto will be in your 8th house, which is a house of fears and death and change and all these not so exciting things, which kind of go hand in hand with what Pluto's all about. But I think that Cancer might see some of these changes as positive and useful, but for the most part, they may struggle to fully subscribe to the idea. In the image, we have this lady in the desert seeing a half-broken robot just holding on to dear life, and I feel like that's the way that Cancers might perceive these robots. It's just this dead thing that doesn't provide any real human connection. So why do we care so much about it?
I think Cancer rising is definitely more likely to feel alienated or threatened by the impersonal themes of Pluto and Aquarius. I think that you'll get the best results if you interact with it like you would with anything in the eighth house, which is kind of maintaining a healthy separation and understanding that that's terrain where you're interacting with like other people's interests, not necessarily entirely your own. So not take it so personally, because it's really not personal. It's actually very, very impersonal. It's for humanity as a whole, not about, whether or not you're hungry today. Last thought is that I think you're going to be seeing Cancer risings pioneering the use of AI to generate bots based on dead relatives, like social media profiles or something.
All right, and Leo is getting pretty close and personal with this Pluto transit. It's in your 7th house, which is the house of other people, or of your partners, and anybody who's like really close and personal with you. And so I feel like the image really kind of captures a little bit of that. It's just the sense of really having to stare down this robot and figure out its place in your life because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I think Leo rising is going to be the most susceptible to feeling like their light sort of being put out a little bit, or like they're being overshadowed by these larger scale social changes. They're not the most popular kid in school anymore. Suddenly, like everybody's the most popular kid in school. There are like 10 of them. So a sense of alienation could show up, and there may be a doubling down on your way of being in sort of opposition to those themes, or there could be a like emphasis on like trying to keep up with the changes. That alienation may see some Leo risings turning to AI or robots for love. Let us know in the comments, Leo risings. Are you already flirting with AI? Are you already dabbling?
Virgo is interesting because Pluto will be in your 6th house, which is the place of health, but also employees, also hard work and toil. And I see them 2 ways. And I think the image captures both of these ways, because in the image we have a person with mechanical legs and they're just having a little bit of a troublesome moment. One of the ways that I see this is that certain Virgos might see these technological advancements as a way to augment themselves, to make them be more productive and more useful, and really just focus on the work and labor aspect of this. The other piece is that it can also bring some of the health concerns that some of these technologies can cause, but also some of the health benefits that some of these technologies can fix. And I think Virgo is well suited for that, especially as we're in this conceptual stage of this Pluto and Aquarius transit.
Yeah, I think Virgo rising is going to be especially susceptible to paranoia generated over health issues that result from, emergent technological changes or social changes. I have this vision of Virgo rising sort of managing like small armies of like AI slaves or employing AI effectively, maybe reducing the amount of labor that they have to expend by taking on more of a role of managing AI or technology rather than doing like all the little menial labor themselves.
And Libra, on the other hand, has a really pleasant image. I think it's my favorite image of this series of 12 images. Libra, I feel, is well positioned to be more so inspired by some of these changes within the zeitgeist. In the image, we have a robot posing as a Libra just paints a nice picture of that robot. And I think that one of the primary things that Libras can benefit from is just the surge in creativity that these changes might bring. It's kind of like maybe these technologies will make an idea that you've had that was previously impossible possible now, and maybe you'll pursue that.
Yeah, I think overall Libra rising is well situated to benefit from Pluto and Aquarius creatively, probably enjoy some of the trends that emerge from it. Maybe might fall into obsessions with some of the new trends that emerge, but it's mostly for funsies. There could be some maybe fears generated over, how technology is impacting your children might be a way that Libra rising is affected by it. But I think we'll see a lot of Libra risings cultivating an ever-growing collection of high-tech sex toys.
Nice. There you go, Libra. Well, nice segue into Scorpio. For Scorpio, this is in your fourth house, though less sexy, more spooky. Fourth house is a place where we find comfort, and to have Pluto be there in Aquarius, which is a bit of this all-seeing eye, can be a little anxiety-inducing for Scorpio, I guess, especially a sign that's likely to wrestle with issues around trust and yes. So I feel like Pluto being there can really exacerbate some of those feelings in places where we feel comfortable. Like what happens when you're really obsessed about your phone tracking all your things, or the Google phone that you have is listening to everything that you're saying. Oh my God, what do we do? I feel like these are Scorpio issues that will be a little more real than for other people.
Totally. This will be especially interesting for the Scorpio risings with Pluto and Scorpio. I think will be more pronounced for them, but I think we're definitely going to see some themes around. Some may feel a sense that their private life is being invaded by, mass surveillance, or the ways that technology erodes the barrier between personal and private. You may also note renewed interest in like family history, maybe discovering deeply buried family secrets that may or may not be dark in nature.
Sagittarius, Pluto is coming into your third house, which I found very interesting because the third house is like your everyday life. It's kind of like just the things that are always happening. And to have Pluto be there and to have this change in the zeitgeist be in this place where it deals with your everyday life, it might just feel like this conversation is just something that's happening everywhere you look at. In the image, we have this person overseeing this desert, but there's big billboards everywhere. It's hard to even see the vastness of the desert just because these things are blocking your way. And I feel like that might be the sentiment Sagittarius might have around these. There is something to be said about some of these things being implemented and kind of just being like well-oiled gears in your life, but we're probably more so just laying the blueprint as to how these things will eventually fit within these systems.
I think Sagittarius rising is a little better suited to integrate some of the changes that Pluto and Aquarius is bringing into their daily lives, maybe take advantage of them to help them manage or streamline their day-to-day activities. I think we'll see a lot of Sagittarius risings, especially the Pluto and Sagittarius generation, either like at the front of the line to receive like AI implants and stuff, or like the most deeply fearful of implementing that kind of hybridization of human and technology.
Well, Capricorn, I feel like Capricorn kind of has it a little bit better than the other people. I kind of like Pluto in the second house. It seems interesting because one of the things that sometimes gets overlooked with Pluto is just the signification of wealth and like great vast amounts of wealth. And the second house is a place of wealth. So for Pluto to be going there seems to be pointing towards these technologies bringing profitable opportunities for Capricorn. If you look in the image, we have this lady who's found a credit card in the middle of the desert, but then behind her, there's this line of robots following her. And so I feel like the thing with Capricorn is that, yes, there's opportunity, but the surveillance thing with Pluto and Aquarius might be working against you. So either it's that you have to go looking for these opportunities in strange places, or is that you have to keep your successes hidden so the overlords won't knock you down.
I think Capricorn rising is going to be especially confronted with the increasingly abstract nature of money and resources. There could be a sense that the more reliable ways of generating income feel less reliable, or that they're maybe being outmoded, and there could be an interest in decentralizing the revenue stream in some way to mitigate the risk to one income stream, but also to just make more money. I think the one risk I'm a little concerned about is maybe over investing in something that seems like it's going to be really big and maybe making a ton of money, but that thing could also be very volatile. Like, we'll say Bitcoin, for example. Like, oh, I made like $2 million this year on Bitcoin. I'm going to spend another 2 million on it, and then you lose it all because it crashes again. And like there's just avoid like all or nothing gambits with your finances.
Capricorn has passed the baton to Aquarius. I feel like the biggest thing to sit with as an Aquarius really is this idea of becoming Pluto, of being powerful. I think that it's interesting because we talked about Leo and how Leo is used to being in that position of power, and it's used to being like the star that everybody looks at. And I feel like it's interesting to have that be shifted towards Aquarius, which usually prefers to be outside of the limelight. And it's not like Pluto coming in there, like the Lord of the Underworld will bring all the light upon you. But I think that there's something to be said about being invisible and remote and still having that power. I think that brings a lot more responsibility than the sun might have, because with the sun, everybody can see if something goes wrong. With Aquarius, the blame can be scattered and spread across all these little nodes.
Aquarius risings are likely very susceptible to becoming enamored with the prospect of being remote and powerful and possibly not fully visible. I think they're likely to experience the changes as more of like a personal initiation that can be jarring, potentially, we'll say. But the willingness to maybe commit to like a grand experiment for the long term is, already there for Aquarius. And like, I think those strange experiments are going to be on offer. So they may pay off, they may not, but I think they're going to feel the changes in the world more personally, and there's probably going to be a susceptibility to taking on heavily reactionary or revolutionary ideas in response to them.
Now, closing up our zodiac circle is Pisces. With Pisces, I feel like it's a little similar to what Cancer is going through, but whereas Cancer is more willing to accept some of the benefits of that thing, I feel like Pisces is more likely to reject it entirely. Pluto is going to be in your 12th house, which is a place of the hidden enemies. And I think that it's likely that the Piscean people out there are more willing to subscribe to the idea that these changes are not for the best of humanity, and they will just reject it with all the power that they have. Not in all cases, of course, because astrology doesn't work like that. But Pisces is not very interested in a world where we're sharing space with this cold and unfeeling thing that defines how we live. I think Pisces has a more poetic view of life that Aquarius doesn't really jive with.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree. I would say that Pisces rising is likely to either reject these changes entirely or try to avoid them, maybe escape into another reality that feels protected or separate from the strange cyberpunk dystopia that's forming around them. I think there might also be a sense of like feeling like the world is leaving them behind, feeling like they're not able to keep up with the changes, or that they're not receiving the benefits quite as readily. And I think, they'll probably be most susceptible to the different psychological disorders that might be invented as a result of these changes in society. I'm sure there'll be some interesting ones that arise.
Well, what a note to close the episode.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
guys,
Yeah.
this is it. If you're a Pisces, good luck. If you're Aquarius, good luck. Everybody else, also good luck. It's an interesting transit, but like we said, some of the topics that we addressed are kind of spooky and fearful, but that's Pluto. We're talking about these types of things. But the good thing about Pluto is that Pluto is also slow, and it gives us a lot of time to get acclimated to these things. And we're talking about just the bound, and the bound itself will be hanging out with it until April of 2027. So have a lot of time to ponder upon these things. And I think that that's really what the Mercury bound is asking of us, to just learn what there is to learn about these changes before we go into Venus's bounds, where the story will be very different. But if you are curious about this transit for you specifically, you can book a reading with me at themercuryrising.com.
Yeah. You can book a reading with me at KylePierceAstrologer.com.
Well, with that, this has been Pluto and Mercury's bounds in Aquarius. I hope you guys have a great 2 years and a little bit. And I will see you guys in 2027, hopefully next week on our weekly horoscope.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.